Welcome to Heart Snuggles. We're so happy you're here today. Brought a friend that met at a fun event a month ago. So, yeah, go ahead and tell them who you are.
Hey everyone, Samir Janjua here, photographer and live events facilitator, mostly men's work, and been doing some music lately. And here in Marina Del Rey, just love the beach, love chasing the sun with the camera, love dancing. And I consider myself, and people reflect back to me like bright and positive and kind of just easygoing, so to say.
Yeah, so good. I love that you have so many different passions that you follow.
Mm.
So, the question of the podcast is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Random act of kindness someone did for me. Let me think for a second. Love it. Hmm. Well, I was at this gathering this weekend, and it was a friend's birthday, and the theme was Elton John, and there was a lot of sparkles and glitter and iridescence. And my friend said, "Hey, would you like some sparkles?" I was like, "I would love some sparkles." So I just kind of surrendered, and she was just putting sparkles all over me, and I was just like, "That was so cool to receive your like adornment and style and like sparkle magic." I
Oh,
think that's a fun random act of kindness.
that is, and that's how we connected. You sparkled me up at the party. That's funny, full circle. I love that. Cool. Thanks for sharing that moment. And now I just love to hear about your journey about how you got into men's work and how your relationship has been with understanding the full complexity of being a man.
Cool. Okay. So the journey of getting into men's work and then the full complexity of being a man.
Yeah, like how did you begin to explore the depth of it and not just like stay in the masculinity and invite the feminine in? And yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, great. Yeah, this is a fun question. So June 2018 is when one of my best friends looked at me in the eyes, and I consider this like a defining moment. And he just offered me this opportunity to go do an initiation weekend called the Men's Weekend. And I had no idea what it was. And in that moment, I just really trusted in who he was being. His success was skyrocketing. His relationship was successful. He was confident, and I was like, "Now, whatever you have, like I want that, and I trust you." So I just said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been on the path of men's work ever since then. Just I went had the modern day initiation, came back, circled up with the men, continue circling up, and then I've started to do some of my own facilitation. And yeah, I've just found that men's work really works. I think for me, it provides one of the most tangible things still is that I just have a wide collection and a big community of brothers of all ages, men that are like father figures, men that are grandfather figures, men that are brothers, men that I'm mentoring, where I could just get to receive all this collective wisdom from, where I get to learn from them. Many of them have become clients now. And we just have a lot of fun. I can call them whenever I'm really struggling and get their wisdom, get their advice, or just have them hear me out. And if I have some really deep emotional kind of like things that I need to get off my chest and release. For example, one of my best friends a couple months ago was passed away, and I was just so shocked. I didn't know what to do, and I was able to circle up with some of my men. We had a couple of rituals we did out in nature in the park, and I was able to release a lot of those emotions in a safe environment where I really felt held by those brothers, and I was able to just cry and cry and cry and get all those emotions out, that kind of anger and just frustration and sadness and grief. So I see the circle. I continuously come back to kind of receive from the men, and I'm also able to give to the men too, and I'm able to basically teach the wisdom that I'm learning to the younger men or to men who haven't maybe been in the space before. So I think that's just a little bit about the journey, and then to talk about the second part of really, it's like what I heard you say is how am I kind of learning about my own masculinity as well as how do I express my feminine? Would that be a way to kind of lead into it? Great. Yeah. So let's just talk about the moment I met you. That was kind of fun. We were at this really fun event in Venice, California. It was like there was DJs, there was music, there was pool, there was yoga, and I brought some glitter to the party. And I intentionally was like, I'm going to use this glitter as like a connection tool to meet new people and ask them if they would like to have some, body glitter on their face or on their arms. And it was also just a way to connect and get to know someone. So I would very much consider me in that moment kind of expressing more of my feminine, creative, playful, just fluid side, and letting go of any kind of masculine structure container, whatever that might look like, and allowing myself to be a little bit more expressive and kind of play with that energy with others too. And then also like dancing was a part of that event. And I just love dancing. I found that it's a way for me to like move energy. It's a way for me to express myself. It feels really good. Like I was dancing just this weekend. I was like moving my hips and like really getting low and just having a blast. I think there's a really beautiful dance of being in the masculine and the feminine as someone who identifies as a man. And I love to kind of lean on the edges of both. And just experiment with both energies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so great that you can do that, because it's really confining when you just have to stick to just one, And I feel like a lot of men are now like being able to open up to exploring all parts of themselves. And I think that's so freeing. Like it must be such a nice feeling to like not be like, oh, I have to be masculine in this situation.
Totally. Yeah. It feels really good to choose. When one of my friends said it one time, he's like, imagine like opening a container of masculine energy and closing it, and then like opening a container of feminine energy and closing it. And it's like we kind of get to dance between both of those energies in a sense. So yeah, it is really fun. And I before I got into men's work, I would consider myself mostly operating in my masculine and choosing that. And then as I like kind of grounded confidently in my masculine, I was able to be like, yeah, let me like dance in the feminine and see how that feels. And what does that expression look like? And how are others receiving it, and et cetera.
Yeah, that's a good thing to inquire. Like, how are people receiving me as I do this? It's so interesting, because I find too, like a lot of women want that. They like want all of that in a man, but then some of them don't know how to handle it when a man is accessing a parts of himself. They're like, wait. So how have you found that with dating? Like now that you are this new version of yourself?
Yeah, like if I'm in my feminine around perhaps like a romantic partner, the question is? Yeah, that's an interesting dance, because I think for me, like if I have a romantic partner, and at the moment I'm choosing like a woman to be a romantic partner. So I would say like, let's say she's in her feminine, then I get to show up in my masculine, perhaps provide a little more structure, providing a little bit more like comfort, making she's comfortable, like kind of maybe leading. Let's say we're going on a date. Like I went on one 2 weeks ago, and I was like, look, I'm going to pick you up at this time. This is what you want to, this is what I'd like for you to wear. And like everything else is going to be a surprise. So in that moment, I think I was really operating in my masculine. And I think that was a good way to like, lead the first date, in my opinion. And then I think also, let's go back to this weekend, for example. I wasn't dating anyone at this gathering, but I would say I was dancing very much in my feminine. And it was such a fun way to express myself with the woman at the moment who I was dancing with. And it was just this really gorgeous dance, because we were literally like kind of flowing, and there was moments where I was leading. There's moments where we were dancing together and she was leading a bit. So it was like, oh, who's leading? And like, who's kind of taking the charge here, and who's stepping back to like follow in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great that you can feel into that too, and be aware that we can switch in between and flow in between. And I like that you said that too, because I learned that as well. Like it has to be opposite. It doesn't matter who's doing what, but there needs to be the polarity, I think, of like someone's in the masculine, someone's in the feminine, instead of like both in one of them. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I think that's really wonderful. And I think another thing that a lot of men I'm noticing are struggling with dating is just settling. So when, a lot of my guy friends that are single, they're like, I just like, if someone likes me, like they kind of just go for it and choose that one. And I don't like saying that, because I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. And I'm like, I know so many amazing men in my life. I'm like, you don't have to settle just for the person that likes you. Like you get to have a say in it as well. And so how have you helped yourself, or how would you help a man that's in that situation that's just like, finding himself settling?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think for me, what I'll speak from my personal experience, and then perhaps there might be some wisdom that flows out of that. I'm in a place where I'm like searching for, I'm 31 years young, and I'm searching for like the woman who could be the mother of my children. Like that's like the like my ultimate kind of partner that I'm searching for. And I'm just really picky. So I'm like, I'm committed to not settling. I'm also committed to going on dates to find that person whenever that person shows up in my life. And I'm being very patient too, because I think for me, I'm really focused on becoming successful and being successful. And right now that looks like building a strong foundation of financial kind of wealth, so to say, as well as like getting crystal clear on my purpose and building businesses and life and structures around that. So like, that's my focus right now. And I want to create that for myself so that when I do meet that person, like I'm basically qualified and ready to have a long-term partnership with that person. And what I would say to someone who's settling, I would just ask them, like, is it worth it to settle? Like, and I'd ask them to consider, like, have they, are they successful at this moment in terms of, and are they clear what that looks like? And if not, I'd invite them to really create that for themselves. And then I'd also ask them, perhaps like look at someone in their life, like another male role model, and like study them. Like what is it that they did that they were able to achieve success or have a successful partnership or marriage or romance, and get some wisdom or advice from that person. Because what I found is when I reach out to some of the elders, men in my community, they're more than willing to give me advice and help kind of guide me, so to say.
Yeah, that's so important to always lean on your communities and ask those questions. Like that's how I've gotten so far in life, is because I'm always asking my people in my life those questions. People I look up to, I'm like, how'd you do it? Like, or what works for you? And it really opens up that door and it helps you too. And like you were saying, it's like that beautiful circle it's forever interchanging energy. It's like you're giving and receiving and giving, and it's a circle. So like the energy is constantly going and you all benefit from one another. So I think that's really cool that you are open to doing that and not afraid to ask for help.
Mm.
And something else that I see too is men being scared sometimes to approach women because of so many stigmas, like of how men treat women and how women, women are womanized and whatnot. And so do you ever face that, like having to be like, you know what I'm saying?
Now, like, is the question also like, let me think about it. And do I get in my head before I approach a woman? Is that a similar, or is there a different way? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how to, like, I just see some men that are like super, super kind and nice, or kind of afraid because of how women are treated sometimes. And so they just don't want to make it seem like they're coming onto a woman in an inappropriate way, or like, yeah, I don't know how to phrase this question.
Sure. Perhaps we can like dance it out. Perhaps like, let me think for a second. So for me, for example, like I've been on some dating apps recently, and when I see someone that I genuinely have a connection with, I'll just send, like, the first message I'll send would be something along the lines of like, hey, it looks like we have a lot of similar interests and values. I think we'll have a great conversation. Are you up for like an old school phone call date? And I just like am just direct with it. And because of what I think is I really actually want to get on the phone with this person and have a conversation to discover if we do have similar interests and if there is some kind of chemistry or connection on the phone. And I found that either, yes, we'll have another conversation after that. Maybe it's an in-person, or maybe it's another phone call, or maybe FaceTime, or it's that was a great conversation. I appreciate it. But I don't think we're going to have this kind of romantic connection that we're looking for. So what I've been doing lately is if I see someone that I'm genuinely attracted to, or I think there's going to be some kind of connection, I'll just be a little bit more direct about it. Hey, I'd love to take you on a phone call date or go on a date. Because I found that just works, as opposed to kind of beating around the topic, or like maybe being too friendly or being in the friend zone. I've definitely done that before, and that just doesn't work, or I don't really get the results that I'm looking for if I truly want to take this person on a date. So perhaps that's adding to the question there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think too, just being direct, because sometimes we're just so scared to, like, we don't know, so we take our time. And it's like, if you just do that, then you find out so much quicker, right? It's like you get your answers so much faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you deal with rejection?
That's great. Well, I think that's a a long-term kind of game, so to say, because I still face the fear of being rejected, whether it's like if I approach a beautiful woman and she's just not into me, or if it's like, I'm asking for a client to purchase something that I'm offering, especially if it's like a higher amount. I still find myself getting in my head sometimes around like, right before I dial the client's number or whatever it is, or the person I want to take on a date or whatever it is. I definitely find moments of like hesitation. And I think it's just about practice, like just hitting the call button and just like trusting in in just who I'm being and the training and development I've done this far. Like I'm just trusting like it's going to work, like just get out of my own way and just get in communication and just make a request or make the request. And I found that the more that I make requests and people either accept them or decline them or counter offer, then I'm just the more comfortable I get with making requests of people and like not making it a big deal. So I think practice is like the key to getting a yes or getting a no or getting some kind of like counter offer, whatever that might be in a situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And not making it about your identity. Like this one no doesn't destroy who you are and your being.
Totally right.
But it's hard because we all like, I don't know one person that doesn't fear rejection. Like it's a hard emotion to feel. And so we often try to avoid feeling those hard emotions. And so how have you learned to like feel the spectrum of your emotions as a man? Were you ever like detached from your emotions, or have you always been pretty connected?
Great. Yeah. Great question. Like I mentioned earlier, when my friend passed, like I just was shocked. And then I started to feel a bit more like I knew I was feeling sadness. I could tell like my throat was getting kind of, for me, sometimes I feel like my throat chakra, just like a lump in my throat. I'm like, okay, like this energy wants to come out of me. So I've been doing my best to just like close my eyes, breathe into it. And there was a few times after that, when I was in my car by myself with the lyrics on, a song would hit and a lyric would hit, and it would just hit me so deep in my heart. And I was like, okay. And I just would allow myself to cry. And there was another moment 2 weekends ago where I was at this music event and I just felt another kind of wave of sadness. And there was a lot of people around me, and I was noticing myself like almost suppress it, like don't cry in front of these people. So it's interesting to still sense when I want to like look good or seem strong in front of people. Or sometimes like maybe just this weekend there was a few, we were doing some breath work in a circle, and there's a few women around me that were crying. And I was like, am I sad too? But I was like, no, I'm not sad. I'm just like around sadness and it's okay. Which was interesting to be with other emotions and kind of tune into my own and see if there was anything there and check. And then, I think before I did some of this transformational work, like men's weekend and like some of the other personal development I've gotten into, I think before then I was definitely a bit more suppressed and closed with my heart, with my emotions. Because I don't think I'd really seen a lot of like other men kind of express themselves and allow the grief to run, and it was like welcomed in the circle, and it was safe. I think by me seeing a lot of the other men and women too in some of these programs cry and express and release emotions, I myself felt like, oh, this is way more normal. It's okay. Like no one's making me wrong, or like I'm not getting in trouble, or like no one's making fun of me. Because I think back in the early days when I was a young man and elementary school, middle school, if I were to cry, like my friends might be like, oh, you're weak. Like, don't cry, this or that. So I think there was definitely a bit more of a box around like my emotions that I was kind of conditioned to. And that I also just like allowed and chose as a young man until I started to get more into this transformational journey, I would say. And then I started to open up a lot more.
I can just like feel that feeling like, how good that must have felt to be able to access that and not be made fun of and just be accepted for it, parts of yourself. It's like, it's so sad that we have to shame. Everyone has emotions, and so it's really sad that we shame some of those. And so now as a leader, how do you create safe spaces so that men can access all parts of themselves and their emotions?
Yeah, great question. So like, for example, on Sunday, we're having a circle on the beach, a men's circle. There's like 25 men. And we create right in the beginning a circle. We welcome everyone. We all literally are in a circle, and then we create confidentiality. So whatever we say, any of the names of the other men, specifically any details that those other men share, will be confidential. And so that like men can kind of take their masks down, speak their truth, talk about the challenges in their life, and feel safe and to do so in a space. I think confidentiality definitely works. I think being in a space where other women or children aren't present, where it's just the men, I found does create a safer environment because they're not going to feel like, maybe a woman's looking, I want to appear strong, like, before I got in the circle. And then I would say like being, maybe closer to nature, a bit away from people creates a safer environment. And then 2 weekends ago, we were at a camping around a campfire. And that's just another really kind of primal, beautiful place to be around the fire, having conversations. And then just a couple of days ago, I was also at this other facilitation here at Venice, and a man, and I said, hey, if anyone needs to like release emotions or has something on their heart that they want to let go, like I'm more than happy to facilitate an activity. This man raised his hand, and we just went over to the side and we did a simple exercise where I acted like he was partner A, I was partner B, and I acted like I just allowed myself to be the person that he was kind of holding these emotions onto, and he got to say whatever he wanted to say to me in that moment, and then I just held space, received him, and then kind of guided him through some more questions, and then I asked him if I could hug him, and just held him, and we did a couple breaths together. And it was just that sensation of touch and like feeling safe. And I was just there with him. I wasn't like necessarily fixing him or saying anything. I was just literally listening. And he said that he felt a lot better. Like, that was kind of a release for him. And that it just felt good. So I think that is a very simple technique too. And the last thing I'll say here is like, I just ask people if I can hug them often too. I'm like, hey man, can I give you a hug? Or hey, can I give you a hug? Like asking for the hug and just going in and, hey, can we do a couple deep breaths together as we're hugging? And like, it's not a sexual thing. It's more of a like an intimate, like hugging just feels really natural and good, especially coming kind of out of quarantine and COVID and all this stuff. It's like, I haven't had much touch at all for the past couple of years. So it's like, I'm just craving it more than ever now.
Yeah, touch is so healing. I love touch and hugs, heart snuggles. But I think that's really beautiful what you just described. And and creating safety really isn't that hard, but I think just a lot of men just don't know how to do that and for one another. And so that's really great that you shared that, and hopefully that more men can incorporate that into their own lives. And I also want to touch on what you said about how you didn't fix. And so how did you reprogram yourself to not fix others when they're sharing something?
Yeah, great question. I'll share a little story. Like when I first got into some of the coaching transformational work, I was so excited that I started like coaching my mom. And she said to me one time, she's like, look, son, like I do not want you to coach me. I just want to be your mother and like for you to be my son. It was a really big breakthrough for me because I was like, oh, wow. Like I was just, without even asking her if I could share some wisdom or thoughts, I was just kind of projecting, and it was just because I was so excited and I was unconscious that I was doing that. And then through moments like that, I've now learned to just really generously listen to someone and then ask them, hey, are you open if I share some feedback or some wisdom or some thoughts around this? Because I'm like, when someone's sharing, they're kind of like sharing energetically, so to say. And then like I want to make sure before I deliver something or share some mind stuff that they're even open to receive it. Because sometimes people just want to be heard. And then sometimes they are open to feedback or wisdom, so to say. And then I also make sure to always share or do my best to share from a place of personal experience of something I've personally gone through. So that like, this is a lesson that I've learned and this is how I think it could benefit you. Making it personal, I think definitely helps as opposed to like saying you, or this is like something I've learned from someone else, because it doesn't seem like I've really integrated or embodied that wisdom yet. So that's kind of some of the ways that I've been sharing in a way and giving perspective to someone and asking kind of with consent if they're open to receiving some of the things that I have to share in this moment.
That's so powerful. And that it's just that simple thing. It's so funny. Doing this work, you realize how easy or simple everything really is. It's those little questions just before the permission and the consent and all those things. And it makes such a huge difference. And people feel, most of the time, people really just want to be heard. Like at the end of the day, there's so much advice being thrown at everyone. They just like want to be heard. And then if you do hear them, then they're so much more receptive to receive if you do have something to offer them. And just by asking too, that creates such a different dynamic that they're like, oh, wait, yeah, that would be nice to receive something like, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So cool. That's amazing. And so now is your family, well, I guess what's your relationship with your father? Is he open to all of this?
Yeah, great. This is so cool. My dad's in Pakistan at the moment. He's been there for the last, he's been taking care of his father, and that's where he grew up. And so we're actually flying him in to see his grandbabies for the first time. So I'm so excited. So I get to see him in a couple of weeks, like 3 weeks. And my relationship with my father has improved so much because I've actually, for the past 2 years, I've been circling on Zoom with a few men's teams. And I've invited my dad to come Zoom with us and do the men's work online, which has been really cool. So he's been in a lot of these conversations where we have gone deep, and he's saying a lot of the men in the circle just talk about some of their experiences, and he's also opened up. So I think I'm just really grateful that he's even open to these kinds of conversations and work. I would say him and I are probably the most connected we've ever been since I've been a young man. And I'm really excited to see how he shows up as a grandpa, and to understand what does he want to create now that he's in this, the probably the 3/4 mark of his life, so to say. Like he's 3/4 of the way there. And I'm just so excited to re-engage that conversation. What I've also realized through some of the work is it's my role as a son to just accept my father as he is. There's nothing to fix.
Yeah.
And be a son on his terms. Like, what does he want to create with me? And how can I just listen to him? And how can I guide and support him and bring him to the circle and see how he interacts with the other men? Because I've seen he father figures a lot of the other men, and he's also receiving a lot of wisdom from the other men too. And I'm just committed to letting him know that, Dad, you've done thank you for doing the best job that you could do as a father. I'm so grateful, and this is what I've created so far, and I just appreciate you, and let's have more experiences together.
That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh. I love that your dad is open to that. My dad would not be open. And so that's so cool that you can just slowly bring him in any way that you can. And and it's a very nice energy of not pressure, but just the open invite, open door, and watching him interact with you. And I'm sure he's so proud of you. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll wrap up. The last question of the podcast is, what brings you joy?
Oh, great. So many things bring me joy. I think the sun, the sunrise, sunset, dancing, anything outside, the ocean, the beach, California, a motorbike, mountain biking, skateboarding, rollerblading, great conversations, great food, yummy drinks, connecting with other human beings, like my brother's little babies, children in general, doing the work, personal development, personal growth, reading, listening, creating, being creative, music, playing music, fires, dance, being around the fire. I think a lot of those things bring me joy.
So good. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of those. And if people want to find you, what are you offering and where can they locate you?
Yeah, thank you so much. Instagram / Samir, SAMIR _ Janjua, JANJUA. And then I've got some other links on there. And then my latest offering is two things. One is photography. I love to photograph portraits of entrepreneurs or coaches for their kind of social media, as well as commercial kind of products. And then the next thing would be, I'm really excited about live events. And I've been hosting about a monthly men's circle on the beach here in Marina Del Rey. And we're actually going to do a co-ed circle soon where men and women come together. And then we're going to start working with some music. So that'll be another thing here local in Los Angeles. And you can DM me, you can follow me, you can reach out, and I'm more than happy to continue the conversation.
Perfect. I highly recommend it. My roommate goes and he loves it. So if you're in LA area, I would recommend going. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful light with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time so much.